So I don't want to say, oh, see, okay. All right, welcome everyone on Facebook and beyond to the Woods Hole Film Festival. During the past week or more, really, because we started these chats before the festival actually began, we've had over 200 filmmakers take part in these chats, and which is wonderful. I mean, the downside of this year's festival is that we can't get to meet all these great people face to face, and they don't get to come to wonderful Woods Hole. On the other hand, more people are able to participate, so we're able to meet more filmmakers. They're able to, more are able to attend, albeit virtually. So that's been a real plus, and it's been great to get to know everybody, and this should be more of the same. So these are all short films under the title 9 to 5, some more directly than others, but they all apply. And so what I'd like to do to begin is start with the Rigor Mortis gang. If we could start with a couple of Canaan brothers. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. And maybe you could introduce yourselves, say in your film, and we could also have James, the star, speak. And then we'll go through all the films, and then we'll continue on our merry way.
Great, Tim. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Great to be with everybody. So I'm Chuck. I'm the director of the film. This is Jeffrey, producer, and we're two of an 8-brother crew. So there's a bunch of us. We're actually on production in New York right now. So the guys are working on production. But we. What's great is we also have James Leet down there, who is one of our actors in Rigor Mortis, and Brian Donovan. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah, so Brian. So yeah, we love these guys, and the film is about a mortician who finishes embalming a body, and the body tries to walk out of the funeral home. So that's a short comedy, and yeah, we had a ton of fun making it. So, and we're psyched to be in Woods Hole.
Great. Also, I mean, while we're on the subject of family, let's see, there also was maybe a Janie also, or there was a, let me see if I can find.
Is Brian.
Yes, Janie, the makeup person. Is that a sister?
Sister, yeah, yep.
So 9 Canaans.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Plus wives too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's great. Okay, James, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
I'm saying plus the wives and girlfriends. So it's a big crew. Everyone gets involved. The parents, Chuck's parents, they're great.
And James, you play the mortician.
I play the mortician. What I like to say about this film, really, there is no dialogue except from sound bites from the television. So it's all emotion, and I enjoy doing that. Just acting with emotion.
Yeah.
It's a very physical role too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. I had some cuts on my arm from smashing through glass, and
especially when you threw the rock at me.
Threw a rock at Brian. Hope he's okay. He's all healed up. So,
and Brian, introduce yourself.
I'm Brian Donovan. I have had the pleasure of working with this group, the brothers and the family, a couple of times now, and I've never encountered such magnificently wonderful people. Love James, so anytime him and I can hook
up. Love you, Brian.
It's a palace. It's a palace. We had an absolute ball making this movie. I mean, it's really a good, fun time. We laughed. We tried not to laugh on screen, obviously, but we had a good time.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Where was it shot? The film.
Various scenes in Rhode Island. For the most part, we moved around a little bit to get the different backgrounds that the brothers identified as being correct for the project.
Yeah. Okay.
So I believe it was 3 locations, right, Chuck?
Yeah, we actually shot part of it in Fall River, Massachusetts,
Oh, okay.
So, yep.
and then in Little Compton, Rhode Island.
Fall River, home of Lizzie Borden.
Right.
All right. Thank you. Thanks. We'll let's see. Let's talk about transfer. If we could talk about that a bit. Let's see. Should we start with how about Sage, who I told I told her before we started has one of the all-time great bios on IMDb. Hilarious, and I recommend that everybody look her up, if only to read her bio. It's fantastic. Correct me.
It's so challenging to write a bio, so I just went comedic.
Yeah, it was great. It was so great. But anyway, if you or Aaron want to start us off, or
Sure.
Go ahead.
We're the transfer team. I was the writer and producer, and then co-director with Aaron, and then Jackie is our producer and wonderful star.
hi, Jackie.
The film, kind of hard to give a log line without giving much away, so it's pretty much just a very unexpected job interview.
Right. Okay. That's fair. Yeah. That's probably the trickiest one to describe because, well,
yes.
for some obvious reasons. But yeah. And let's see. So Aaron is a co-director. And how was Sage? No, I'm only kidding. But how? You and Jackie have I noticed on IMDb you've worked on a few films together, right?
Oh, yeah, that's correct.
We have, yeah.
How
actually,
did you get to know each other, or how did that work?
Yeah, I had worked with Jackie on a feature film and a short film beforehand. We met on the feature, a movie called Sunset on the River Styx. And yeah, after that, we got along really well. She's amazingly talented. I loved working with her. And so she'd actually called me when she and Sage were looking to make Transfer. And she said, hey, my friends wrote this amazing script and we're looking for someone to come on and help us get it made. And
oh, okay.
I loved the script and was excited to work with Jackie. And then after meeting Sage, she's amazing. So
yeah,
couldn't say no.
Too, Aaron.
And Jackie, you're also producer, right?
Yes, that's right.
And besides, being on the screen the entire time with Andy.
Yeah.
So.
And she really was sort of also Jackie was also the co-creator with me. Like we conceptualized the story together. I wrote it, but then she was definitely like involved from the very beginning, conceptualizing all the different elements.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I got to be in it.
Pardon?
That's how I got to be in it.
Oh, oh, you were great. You were great in it. You really.
Thank you very much.
And both of you, you and Andy, both worked really well together. And
we lucked out with Andy. He only was able to come on 2 days prior because we lost our main actor. So then we were fortunate enough to get Andy, who saved it, is how I feel.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, it was definitely, both of you were great together. And it was very interesting because you really, the whole time you're going, what is that here? And it was great. It was just intense and great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Deceased ones. So we have Emily and Kate from Deceased Ones. Emily, since you're the creator, along with the star and the writer, why don't we start with you?
Yeah.
Could you talk about yourself and the film, please?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, the film is you know, it really does obviously function as a standalone short film, but it's important, I think, to share that it's also proof of concept for a pilot. So Kate and I have co-created a series for this project, and we're, you know, working on it and developing it as such. So yeah, it's about two friends who get involved in the niche service of role-playing the dead, which is a job that requires they help heal grieving strangers through a surreal game of make-believe, all the while navigating their own identities and deeply layered, you know, relationship to one another. So kind of give it away, but I felt like it's okay. You kind of, you don't really know in the beginning what's happening, and then, you know, you sort of find out, I think pretty quickly, that it's a weird job. So yeah, Kate and I went out to LA. We wanted to make something, and we ended up making that. We're New York based, and yeah, the idea is, you know, I think rooted in our shared interest in the sort of junction of humor and pathos and comedy and tragedy, and sort of those two combating elements of the human experience.
Oh, you definitely pulled that off, because I mean, it's very funny, but it definitely is heartbreaking at times too. And
thank you. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
And when I saw created by in the credits, I thought, geez, I wonder, you know, I mean, usually that's a term used for TV, and I thought, if this is some sort of pilot or that, because, and I think it really could work too. I could see it almost like, oh shoot, what was that HBO show?
6 Feet Under?
With the, what, pardon?
6 Feet Under?
With the morticians.
Yeah, 6 Feet Under, yeah.
Yeah, and so, yeah, 6 Feet Under, it's sort of like, you know, I mean, it's very different. It wouldn't be derivative at all, but I mean, sort of getting into the same issues, and really good. So, so you guys knew each other. Emily mentioned going to LA. Where were you going or coming from?
Yeah, we live in Brooklyn, and we've been making and writing and creating lots of stuff together. So this was one of our second big project, and we knew we wanted to branch out to the other coast and make some new collaborators. And so we just went out there with this partially formed script, and made all these connections. So our cinematographer is based in LA, and same with other actors. Yeah, we really went out there with like very little money and this idea, and like pulled it together with the grace of the community out there that accepted us and supported us. So it was a very cool experience. And then have this thing that's had a life and got us to meet all of you. So it's pretty great.
Yeah.
And Emily's so funny in it. We just have to say Emily's fucking hilarious. Excuse me.
Boy, I so agree. I just and your song and dance toward the end was funny.
Thank you.
We're giving it too much away.
They were giving too much away.
Sorry.
That dance is from my summer camp. So
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh yeah, and you got Roxanne Hart. How did you get her? I mean, she's
yeah. Go for it, Kate.
So Emily, like a good friend of Emily's from New York, grew up with her son, we just got there, and he's a producer, and we were like, we're looking for this age range older couple, and Roxanne and Phil, who play a couple in the show, are actually married in real life.
Oh, wow.
They recommended us. They read the script. They had us over to their beautiful home in central LA, and we're an incredible asset and such a great addition to the team, and they're like still friends. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Thing. Yeah. How do you know her?
Just from movies.
Oh, awesome. Love that.
You know, I'm a geezer, so I've seen a lot of older movies.
She's a star. She was so sick the day we filmed, but it does something kind of magical in her performance.
Yeah.
I could see that.
She's great. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Making sickness work for you.
Totally.
Whole new voice.
Let's see. Okay, I think those we've come. Oh, I'm sorry, Mirren.
Hi.
From Office Song. Such a well, I'll let you describe it, Mirren. You're the producer.
Yeah, so I was the producer of Office Song, which is a kind of film that explores the ordinary lives of office workers by using first-person poetry to camera to kind of express their inner thoughts and feelings interspersed with kind of normal prose. So kind of an experimental film, so to speak.
It definitely, to my notes, I put down the TV show The Office as Shakespearean drama.
Yes.
It's like, it's such an unusual approach, and it's just, wow. I mean, it's taken a chance, but it's so good. I mean, it just,
oh, thank you. We didn't really know if it was going to work beforehand. We kind of had this idea and kind of these different ideas of how it could work, like with the kind of cine fade motor to blur out the background and dubbing the poetry, but it was kind of a bit of an experiment. So all the way through shooting, we were a bit kind of like, is this going to work? But I think what better format than a short film to test out new kind of ways of filmmaking and new ideas and things. So
and
I'm glad you liked it and thought it worked.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And just all of your films really are, you take chances with your films, which is what's great about them. I mean, it's like and certainly with yours is just you really pulled it off, but it must have been difficult. The writing alone.
Well, actually, the poetry was Marcus had already kind of written the poetry like years prior and had been keeping it in his kind of bottom drawer, ready to do something with it. And so it was kind of built around the poems were already there, and the story was kind of sculpted around that, really.
Yeah. Wow. Great. Okay. Well, let's see. I'd like to know a little more about what inspired these films. What, are they based on personal experience or reaction to personal experience? I mean, I know, zombies usually are hopefully somebody's personal experience, but I'd like to get a little more into that, if you don't mind. Maybe we can start again with with those Rigor Mortis guys. What inspired this movie, Rigor Mortis?
Yeah, I think, well, we were working on a project and we had a bunch of the camera gear. So we were like, hey, we have all this nice gear that we rented for the project. Let's extend it a little bit and make a short film out of it. So we kind of just, with time kind of ticking away, we were like, what should we do? And we decided to do a short film. And I think one of the guys mentioned like a mortician, and it just snowballed into like everyone just jumping in with ideas and sort of saying, hey, let's do something about a mortician. And with this crazy twist ending, obviously we won't give much away here, but it just was like, let's have fun, let's choose something, let's laugh. And I think it was like a 5-day shoot. And then a couple of the younger guys in the group ended up writing the script. Chuck directed, and Dan, our brother, did the cinematography. And yeah, it was just fun. It was just a fun thing we wanted to do. And kind of really it was like, hey, we got this nice gear, some anamorphic lenses. So yeah.
I like to say it does have a religious theme to it. The Beatitudes, it's one of the 8 Beatitudes. Am I correct on this, Chuck, Jeff? Mercy. It demonstrates mercy. You'd have to watch the film, and you would get there's mercy involved in it. Okay. There is another theme to it.
Yeah.
I guess
so it does go deeper.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if the way you look at it, James.
Yeah, one of the 8 Beatitudes.
Well,
So
you
they
know,
say.
it's funny. I mean, here, you know, it almost seems like you did it, given the circumstances, almost as a lark. It has that kind of fun, spontaneous result. But you know, it's funny how there certainly are themes in it. For me, it was, you know, so much about the power of media and how it changes the way we think without giving anything away. But certainly the way things transpire is a sort of a result of how we're conditioned to think in certain ways, given the types of things we see over and over again in movies and on TV, and but done in a very funny, you know, clever way.
Sneaks up on you. You know, it is a universal film with very little dialogue, and you know, you have the clips from George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Pretty much that's the only dialogue. So
yeah,
it can play worldwide.
Right.
James, I don't know.
This
James,
is
I
a
don't know if you
real,
did-
true dark comedy, but after the fact, after you've actually watched this once or maybe even twice, I gotta think that you might be thinking, wow, this could happen. You may know a family that has this situation. You absolutely might know. And when you think back about it, it's like, wow, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I know, that's the beauty of it. And you know, all these films certainly have twists, which obviously makes
That's me.
And we can't talk about them, but that's the tricky part. But you know, even well, you know, that is kind of the difficulty, which of course can then segue into transfer, which certainly involves, you know, you're watching, as I mentioned, you're watching the whole thing and going, okay, what, you know, why is this young woman Bridget so angry? What is going on here? And why is, you know,
why is she in a tub?
Yeah, why is she conducting this interview right after getting out of the tub?
Everything symbolic is what we've tried to put in piece into the piece. So it might not be the easiest first time viewing, but come the second time, everything is like linked and makes sense to the overall ending. When Sage and I sat down, I guess there is a theme of, we wanted to play in the world of something in a surrealist space. And then Sage has you have a fascination with.
I'm a little bit morbid. So I tend to just like follow weird Instagram accounts about people like dying of cancer. I have like this weird, I always have, like even as a small child, my mom would always joke that anytime someone told a story, it could be like the most benign story. I was like 5 years old. I would go, did they die? And then people would be like, no, they just, no, they didn't die. And I'd be like, oh, I don't care. So yeah. So wanted to, I've always been a little bit morbid, and that plays into everything that I do.
Well, I suppose you could say it's morbid, but also, I mean, really, it's a part of
uplifting element.
My daughter-in-law teases me because she cannot get through like 10 minutes with my family without that subject coming up in one way or another. We're like people.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's part of life, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, it's okay, so Sage, that kind of explains your how you got you know, your interest in it, and but what made you decide to take and again, I want to be careful about not giving too much away, but what
it was just nice to have the
surreal
idea
approach.
Oh, what made us take a surreal approach?
Yeah.
I mean, I always had a little bit of the idea in my head, and then Jackie and I sat down, and I'm a huge like Alex Garland fan. And so
wow.
there's just something like I wanted, or like I just kind of saw it that way. And then I feel like Aaron was like the perfect addition to all that, because that's also seems to be very like in his wheelhouse. And like he like loves, you know, sci-fi and all these really cool things that are like a little more outside of me. And so then he just came on board, and it just like all came together.
Yeah. Didn't isn't one of your films, Aaron, and I think you made it maybe with Jackie, but like a vampire movie or something?
Yeah, the feature film. Yeah, the feature film that we did together, Sunset on the River Styx, that's a vampire movie, but also delves deeply into like a surrealist approach. And I think that's something that Sage and I talked a lot about, that I love that sort of like old school Twilight Zone kind of attitude of taking, you know, almost a high concept sci-fi idea, but rather than telling it with a lot of extreme technology, the science fiction is more cerebral. It's more surrealist, more metaphorical. And so everything can, you know, it doesn't necessarily look like it takes place in, you know, an alternate world or dimension or reality of any kind, but it's more the attitudes of the filmmaking and the editing and the cinematography sort of lend you that. Yeah,
I could definitely see that. I will say though that you know, even though it's all of what you described, there is definitely an emotional element created, I think, by Jackie and his
Andy.
You know, that like you want to know why she's so angry, and there's certainly that strong human element too. So to kind of combine this sort of, you know, metaphorical or a surrealistic approach, and still have the emotions be very true to life, a kind of you know, anger that Jackie displays as Bridget. But it's not just anger. It's not just one. It's a deep emotion. You know, there's something behind it. It's I mean, it's one of the reasons why the acting is just so good. It's great. And
thank you.
And Jackie's like the opposite of an angry person. She's like,
really?
I can get angry. I can get angry.
Oh, that's funny.
Very emotional though.
Yeah, but how was that a difficult role to play?
You know what? It was the first time producing something alongside when you're in it.
Yeah.
And although I've been working with the script or with Sage from the beginning, it's still, and you know where the character's going, you know the arc, you know the reasons why she's saying everything. But it is hard being on set, seeing certain things that, you know, as a producer, you need to take charge of or you're aware of. And Sage and Travis and Aaron were like, don't worry about it. This is on us. But you can't help but want to still control, and it's trying to like walk away and just be like, okay, I'm just acting now. I have to like just turn away. That it's a difficult thing with that, I think, for me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it's interesting that in so many of these short films, people are playing multiple roles, you know, which of course provides me another segue to Emily with her multi, you know, she stars, let's see, you wrote, you created, so that, you know, I mean, you're speaking the words that you've written. That must be, wait, and then you're saying to yourself, but wait, I didn't write it quite that way. You know, argue with yourself ever?
Yeah. You know, I think being on set and actually shooting, especially with someone like Kate, who's an amazing director who just took charge in such a beautiful way of really managing and, you know, orchestrating everything on set, I got to sort of forget a little bit about I was still Kate there was one day where I told Kate I wasn't coming back. I was done. So there were moments of like, it felt a little too much to be acting and producing and writing and just all the hats that we'd wear when we're, you know, indie filmmakers and having to do it all. But also really cool. And I think, again, because of how wonderful Kate is as a director, I got to forget about everything and focus on the acting, like Jackie kind of mentioned. And yeah, I think, you know, it's tricky but fun, and it's not the first time. I usually write my own stuff, so I'm kind of used to it as well.
Yeah.
So
what drew you to the and Kate to, you know, to this material?
Well, there's a little anecdote about sort of my entry point into this idea, which is I'll sort of try to do the abridged version, but a few years ago, I went and spoke with a shaman who told me that my dad, I spoke with a shaman who told me that I was sort of the embodiment of my dad's dead sister. I was in his life to like recall her nature, her spirit. And so my dad is the son of 2 Holocaust survivors, and his parents lost a child in a kinder action. So he was born into this like really heavy duty, you know, trauma and pain, and of course dealt with it by way of comedy, because that's how we cope with things. And a lot of Jewish people do that. And so I definitely inherited that tragic comedy gene from him, I would say. And I think when I had this conversation with this woman who sort of was speaking in these symbolic terms, the biggest thing that hit me was this idea that we play roles for one another without knowing, that we exist in each other's lives and assume these identities and personas to help one another heal. And so that was sort of the seed for Deceased Ones, this story about role play as a means of fostering human connection and healing grief. So it's sort of a wild, weird way of entering into a concept that is very sort of stylized and strange and high concept. And yeah, thanks. And again, like the comedy tragedy thing, and like the morbidity and play and the fantasy and the, you know, groundedness, sort of those dueling forces at play is always interesting to me as a creative person, and as a writer. So yeah, that was my how I'd started dipping my toe into the whole concept.
Yeah. And in addition to sort of the you know, the 2 employees or whatever, you know, the 2 people role playing, it certainly addresses role playing in a more universal way in terms of who the character that one of them is playing had been wearing a mask. You know, so you address it on, you know, on several levels. It's just such a cliche, but you know what I mean? It's just you hit on a lot of topics. You use that as a springboard, masks, to discuss a lot of things. I do have one question for you that we have to be careful, again, not to give too much away, but I wonder, the parents have a certain reaction toward the end. And I wonder if you think they would have had that reaction if they had had an opportunity years earlier to face something. You know what I mean? What do you think? I don't know if you've thought about that or not, but.
Yeah, Kate, what do you think?
Your movie's about second chances in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Why would anybody hire out somebody anyway? I mean, in a way they're like second chance, but do you think they would have reacted differently in their first chance?
Right. I feel like we can give it away. What are we protecting here? Who's even watching? So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not worried about giving it away. Do you mind?
I don't mind. I mean, I hope everyone still watches it.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch all of yours. So,
yeah,
yeah, they're great.
The role play, the kid finds out that the character he's playing was gay, and the parents didn't know. So he decides to come out in the role play
as character.
Is as the character, and the parents are like a little tripped up, and they're also like, is this real, or are you breaking the rules? Like, what's happening? So sort of to your point too about the many levels, Tim, I think that the character is also having his own coming out experience that maybe wasn't as fulfilling with his real parents, you know, so there's lots of ways people are benefiting from the role play. And that's expanded in the pilot script too, of like, who would choose to do this job and what are you healing in yourself
for
that job? But to your specific question, I think what we're playing with is that the parents knew deep down and never made space for him to feel safe maybe, or never talk to him about it. And that's the regret. It's like, we saw this thing or we knew this thing about our son and we struggled with it in ourselves, so we never let him come out. So I don't know what they would have done, but I do know that the risk that the character takes is a gift to the family in the end.
Yeah.
I think by accepting this person that's real in front of them, they like heal their history or their trauma with their son.
Yeah. And
Sorry for ruining it.
Pardon?
Sorry for ruining it, but still watch. It's really fun.
You should definitely see the movie. Even if you knew everything in it, you should see it. It's so.
That made me want to watch it more. So don't worry about the spoiler.
Well, there you go.
It's hard to talk so vague about your thing. It's hard.
It is. I been reviewing movies for 41 years because I'm really, really old. And I usually tell people that the hardest thing about, you want to write specifically, and yet you don't want to give too much away. So you always have that balancing act. And that's why, I think some critics can be kind of selfish in that they're serving their writing by being very specific, but they're giving too much away. And it's quite a balancing act. So I appreciate the challenge that you guys have in discussing your movies without giving too much away, but really as far as what you mentioned though, about like let's see if I can, trying to remember the character's name, but your partner, Emily, and
Max.
Yeah, that, whether him or your character, that I hope this series comes through, because it would be so cool for you guys to be able to explore the backstories of those characters. I mean, like you said, Kate, you hint at it, you get into it a little, but in real life, things don't all come out at once. So that it was nice to have that sort of glimpse of, okay, well, this is why he can't help himself. He's got to do this.
Right.
And anyway.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you. Okay, so let's go back to Mirren. Hi. Okay, so how, were you working closely with Marcus, or how did this, and how did this come about where you decided this is what you wanted to focus on?
Well, so I work at Marcus's production company, Double M Films. So I'm the head of development there, and we've been working on a feature film script that Marcus had written and directed, and we were kind of in the process of attaching cast and kind of that point where we felt like we were wading through treacle with it, and we just kind of wanted to make something, and we both kind of love the short form film format as just a kind of way to experiment and try out ideas, and we also had always talked about filming something in the office where we work. It's quite kind of cinematic, and there are lots of different levels, and there's the beautiful roof garden and things. So we kind of bounced around ideas of, at one point we were going to do a kind of one take thing starting in the basement and going all the way up, and then with someone like jumping off the roof and all of that. So we were throwing around these kind of bonkers ideas. And then Marcus kind of refound these poems that he'd written years ago. And we just thought, because we wanted to kind of experiment and just do something different while we had this kind of chunk of time, we were waiting for things to happen. We just kind of thought, right, how kind of bonkers and experimental and weird can we try and be with this? So yeah, that's how it kind of came about. And we shot it over a weekend in the office. And we used kind of all the people that work in the office as extras. Like they got some extra holiday days if they came in on the Sunday dressed in like shirt and tie. So yeah, it was all very kind of self-contained, hence being able to film it in 2 days, because we were just at the office that we usually work at during the week.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And of course, so many people can relate to that environment, you know, not the poetic language.
No, but I think we've all had jobs, haven't we, where we either, whether it's been an office or somewhere where we don't feel fulfilled at all, where it just feels like we're on this kind of monotonous treadmill of boringness. So yeah.
But it's interesting how you take a setting that many people are familiar with and have seen in movies or TV or whatever, and situations in that setting that have been done before, and yet because of the poetry attached to it and the way that we really get inside the heads of all the characters, thanks to the poetry and the delivery of the actors, that it's so, you know, here it's like just such a average situation, and you've created something that's so unusual.
Yeah, I think we wanted to, that was kind of a conscious decision with the story, because if you think about it, the story is very straightforward / quite boring. It's people work in an office, guy meets girl, has an affair, they break up. Like, that's nothing unusual. But because we were playing with loads of different elements, we purposefully wanted to keep the storyline very, very straightforward, so we could kind of do all these weird things with it and play around with it. So yeah, I've also given the plot away, but it's I hope you're still watching, because it sounds quite dull having described it.
It's okay. People still read Madame Bovary and they know how it ends.
True. But I also feel as well, because I always feel quite embarrassed when I say to people, oh, it's a film with poetry, because to me that actually sounds quite pretentious, and I always feel a bit, if someone said that to me, I'd be like, oh, poetry and film, like boring. So, but I hope that we do it in a way that's not kind of pretentious. And I think it was quite difficult actually when Marcus kind of said, oh, I've got these poems that I want to put on film. And I was like, oh, good God, really? But actually, because his poetry is so good, I feel it needed to be that good for it to work, because one kind of like slightly jarring duff line and you just be out the window.
Right. No, it was definitely as you said, I think some of the best things, sometimes I think the word experiment, which you've mentioned a few times, I realized at a certain point in my life that because of like a lot of people, and certainly this applies to me, have a fear of failure. And the way that I could get around that is I would say, this is an experiment. And that way it allows you to take a chance and go for it.
And it doesn't matter if you get it wrong. Like with this, it was a short film, so there weren't kind of financiers or executives like breathing down our neck, or kind of cast that we'd taken up and crew that we'd taken up months of time with. It was 2 days for everyone, and if it went wrong, like, who cares? We just kind of pretend it never happened.
That's amazing that it only took 2 days, though. I think. I mean, you must have been so well prepared going in.
Yeah, I think because it was all in the office that we work in, and even the bar scene was on the roof of the office. There was a few street scenes that we did directly outside the office, but that was the reason that we could really like jam pack it into 2 days. If there'd been any location moves, we wouldn't have been able to do that, and we kind of could have lunch like on the top floor and all of that. So it was, I mean, usually like on previous things that worked on, everyone's kind of running around like headless chickens, but on this it was very kind of controlled, and I had a lot of prep time and support as well, which was great because that's not always the case.
It almost reminds me of like a Virginia Woolf novel where you just get inside the heads of the characters too. It's just poetry really helps in that way, I think, where it's like, oh wow, you know, that Joe Schmo who's sitting next to you, you think might be thinking what's for lunch, and it's thinking rather deep thoughts, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Let's see, how about in terms of and obviously we've touched on this a little bit already, but in terms of themes or messages of your films, what do you, I mean, we got a little bit into it, as, like with Rigor Mortis already, but we could talk about that some more. But I just like to know, like, usually I teach film, and usually I'm always pushing the students to come up with, you know, even if it's Animal House, that there's something behind the surface that you know, strikes somebody. Why would Animal House be somebody's favorite movie? There's got to be something, you know. There are a lot of funny slob movies or whatever, and so I always push them to what do you think the moral of the story is here? What do you think the message is? How can we apply what this is to real life? And so I'm curious, and I know this is a big question to throw at you guys, but I wonder if you have anything to say about that. Why don't we start with the brothers? Put them on the spot first.
Sure, Tim. So it's kind of a funny story because we, our original theme, we actually, when James mentioned about the theme of mercy, we sold the film to an anthology series of short films, and they thought the producer, Sam Sorich, he saw what we were doing and said, "Oh, this would be a perfect fit." So we actually sold. It was the first time we'd ever sold a short film. But originally, I think for us, there's, you know, everyone has those experiences in their families where there is something very tragic, something very sad, and for some reason you go from crying to complete hysterical laughter with everybody. And for us, I think, you know, for us it was just a fun project to work on, but also work through some of those themes of how great sorrow and great joy can, you know, find themselves together in the same moment, and it's incredible paradox. So that was for us what was, I think, the underlying. But and it sounds like a lot of those themes are running through some of the other great films. I can't wait to watch everybody's film. I wish I'd seen them already.
Very similar to what you mentioned, Emily, kind of the tragic and the laughter. And
so yeah, I think that's it. We all have those bizarre moments in our life where the emotions don't always connect with what's supposed to be happening.
Right. Yeah. And thank God that you humor's often saves you in tragic situations.
Oh yeah.
I'd like to say, I'd like to say, when you're watching a film, the viewer subconsciously wants something familiar, and when you make the film, either you're driving them more into that, or you're shocking them with something, taking it in a different direction. So yeah, that familiarity, you know, is what draws you in.
Yeah. Yep.
Maureen is that's what she was saying also. You know, it's a familiar theme, and then you add that poetry to it.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah, and I think that does run through all of these films. let's see. Okay, how about Jackie? How about you, as far as or Sage or Aaron, as far as themes of transfer, which is I think a pretty tricky one, as far as you know, they're in part, I think maybe because it's so surreal, but I'm very curious what you guys what message you think the film imparts.
I think we talked a lot about sort of like this idea of like waiting to live, where there's so many people like play it safe. You spend your whole life doing everything right, you know, sort of that like, and then it can all just not work. And so sort of this idea of like maybe two people who are really opposite in that way, trying to understand maybe which way to go. Like, do you kind of live your life on the edge and take more chances, or do you play it all very safe? And like, you know, are there reasons why, you know, you have to live your life certain ways, was definitely one of the things we talked about. And then also, as it sounds like a familiar theme with everyone, is this idea of second chances and having, and then, you know, it's rare to get a second chance. And when you do, how do you make the most of that?
All right. And you kind of cover both, whether you do or don't have a second chance. And that's interesting. Jackie, why do you think your character is so bitter, angry, whatever you want to call it?
She didn't plan it to go this way. Do you know what I mean? She wanted to aspire to be more, or she's holding a grudge. And I think no matter who walks through that door for the job interview, is never going to be what she imagined. Do you know what I mean? Or is good enough to take her place. So therefore there's just a begruntled, like, what do you have that I don't? Why can't I continue? You know?
Right.
So I think that was the choice of just like the idea whoever walked in was just not appealing at all.
Yeah. She wouldn't want that person to be.
No. And obviously, like I said, we unfortunately lost our one of another actor just prior to it, who maybe fitted it more aesthetically on paper of what we're looking for. And then Andy just brought something, he was a bit of a wild card. He brought a completely different flavor, which was actually really nice. But just this idea of this person walking in and you're just like, no. Do you know what I mean? So then that aggravates you even more, being like, really? I mean, I know I'm probably being a little cryptic, so I apologize.
You're being a little what?
Cryptic.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have to, unfortunately, you have to be. Again, it's that trick of being specific and not giving away too much. But
I would give it more away, but then I'm also like, it's also just interesting to see if it makes sense and people get it. So I think that's why I'm like hesitant.
Sure.
Because you want to know if it actually works.
Right. Well, that's what, and I mean this, you know, it sounds like, you know, I'm fawning or that, but the best movies challenge people to think, you know, and you know, obviously so many movies, unfortunately, spoon feed people everything, and those are the worst movies. And you guys, you know, all the things that you've discussed, you know, I mean, it's like, yeah, they're there, but you have confidence in the moviegoer to figure it out or work on it. I mean, not all the, like, Transfers, I think, in a lot of ways, a difficult film, and that's, to me, that's a virtue. You know, to me, that's a compliment. Same with deceased ones, and you know, and all of them. I mean, you're all challenged to think, okay, you know, Rigor Mortis is a funny movie. You can just look at it that way. But look at the things that we've talked about that you brought up that are, you know, they're anything but trivial. You know, they're important things. So anyway, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be talking so much, but I really admire your films, and I know a few of you have mentioned that you want to see each other's films. You really should, because these are really a good batch of films. Let's see. Okay, where were we? Are we on to deceased ones then? As far as themes, I mean, obviously we've touched on some of them already. Can you think of anything you'd want to add about the themes?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely feel like we've covered this a bit, but the thing me and Emily were thinking to add was the theme of I don't even know if this is, we've already said it, but just the role playing, right? Like and this sort of like performance, you know, engaging in like a one-on-one like theater scene sort of moment is a theme that we're interested in. And Emily touched on it too in her anecdote of like how we do that for each other and our friends, and how we're constantly like shifting characters to relate or heal or support or gain from the people in our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Like, it's sort of what I think Emily mentioned earlier about the masks we put on.
Right. Exactly. And like imagination and sort of fantasy as a tool to connect and as a tool to heal grief.
Yeah. Well, I really hope I really hope it's a TV show. You've got
call Netflix, Tim. Tell them.
Look it up. Let's go.
Dear Netflix.
Netflix, HBO. We're really flexible.
Okay. All right. You'll lower yourself for Showtime or what?
Yeah. Exactly.
Even Hulu. Who knows?
Let's see. Okay. And Miran, how about you with with Office Song? What do you think some of the themes are? I mean, there's all this thought involved, all these people, their different thoughts in that, but what do you?
Yeah, it's interesting because actually I realized that Marcus and I have never actually really discussed it, and I'm sure that he would have a much more kind of eloquent answer. But I was just thinking then, I think that idea of masks that Emily was talking about is very kind of key to Office Song, but I also think there's a kind of existential quality to the film, that kind of nihilistic, like, what is it all for? And I feel like it's a very lonely film as well, even though the characters are kind of next to each other day in, day out at work. They don't really know each other, and even the kind of couple that get together, they just kind of miss each other with their communication. So for me, I find it quite a lonely and depressing film, even though there's kind of music and poetry and all of that. So yeah, I would say for me, those are the themes. Though, yeah, Marcus might say something totally different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, though. And it's interesting, though, that a movie can be dark in the way that that your film is, and yet when a film is really well made, it sort of can capture a kind of beauty that still leaves you lifted because it's well done. So you wonder, like, somebody, Requiem for a Dream is my favorite movie, and it's like, how could that possibly be your favorite? You must really be into depression, or and yet there's when you see art, something that you really feel you've experienced art, there's something uplifting about that, even if the subject matter is
and a nostalgia, I guess, as well. I think the end is that feeling of nostalgia for something that kind of could have been, those kind of near misses, those times in your life that you've maybe felt one thing or whatever. Yeah, I always feel kind of nostalgic as well, having watched it. But it's interesting how it's had quite a Marmite effect on people. Like some people have kind of really connected to it and felt it very deeply, and other people just like haven't at all. They just don't get it, which has been interesting to have created something that's quite polarizing for people. And actually, I was just going to ask, this might sound a stupid question, but how do we watch each other's films? Maybe I've missed an email with all the links on, or just haven't explored the website properly, but I'm desperate to watch everyone's films now.
Yeah, I believe that I'm not the best person to ask, unfortunately. I'm a techno dunce. You know, John, I don't know if you, might know, you know, I know that links were sent, well, maybe some of the filmmakers know if you've gotten a link or whatever, but I think links were sent to some of the filmmakers so that, you know, I mean, maybe.
I can take this question, Tim.
Oh, good, thanks.
Please do.
Yeah, there's a link that you can sign on and you make an account for CineSend, where they're doing a partnership with a festival, and it's free and easy, and then you can view all of it. It's kind of like a account on any of these other platforms we mentioned, Netflix or HBO. You just use your email, password, and then you have access to everything. And everything's available now, which just happened a couple days ago. But
on the Woods Hole Film Festival website,
you probably have to dig in your email for the CineSend invitation to create the account. Did I cut out?
Yeah, something weird happened. It might be because it's 11, and maybe that's a subtle way of them telling.
Send me your email, Maureen, and I'll help you.
Okay, great. I'll send it in the chat. Can I send that in the chat?
Yeah, I'm texting you in the chat, and you can send me, and I'll help you. Enough of that.
Thank you. Sorry, guys.
Okay, great. Well, unfortunately, we have to call it a day, but or a morning. But thank you so much. You guys were all great, and I just I hope you all get to see each other's films, because you'll be glad you did. And thanks for participating. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
Nice to meet everyone, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.